and any other initiatives that you think are important, for example, as around credit bureaus, to address some of the criticisms of microfinance. And I'll start with Steve and work back this way.
Sure. So I guess kind of two different things. I mean, as an institution, Grameen Foundation has invested a lot in a client level measurement tool, poverty assessment tool. So basically, in 20 to 30 countries, Grameen Foundation has taken the kind of national census data that's collected, about every 10 years or so, hopefully more frequently, and found the questions in those, that massive amount of data that have the highest correlation with poverty incidence, and then boiled that down into a series of questions that take about 5-10 minutes for a client to answer, which can give an institution, a probability. It's a kind of a statistical-based tool that they're below $1 a day, above, between $1 a day and $2 a day, or above, or below or above the national poverty line. And there's other tools like this. This is one that Grameen Foundation has created called the Progress Out of Poverty Index, or the PPI. And there's a few other tools as well that get at that client level. So that's something that I think is out there in a number of countries, something that people can use. And it's something that we encourage, kind of all of our clients. It's not a requirement. It's something that we encourage them to use. What we do require for the investees in the Pioneer Fund is that if they're a microfinance institution, that they undergo a social rating. And then we kind of have our own processes built into how we do our selection, which has specifically to do with are they even intending to have a social impact? Are they measuring anything that would allow them to tell to assess whether or not they're achieving that mission? And then what are the results? So it's some measurement of the mission is almost just as important as having the mission in the first place. And so both of those are kind of integral to how we select the institutions that we work with. There's a number of different types of tools out there. I think there's still a little ways to go, but the microfinance industry has come a long way in terms of having options available to networks, investors, or microfinance institutions, so that if having a stated mission of trying to achieve poverty alleviation in some way, shape, or form is there, then they have a way to measure that, and they should be. And that's one of the biggest things that I think an institution or an investor can do, is to really do as much measurement, get as much I think data as possible to kind of back up the anecdotes and claims that have been part of the past of how social performance is discussed.
Thanks.
So as Steve was saying, social performance and social ratings, I was scribbling SPTF and social ratings. So I'm actually curious what Gary has to say about social ratings, given your take on the financial ratings. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say. But from our perspective, so we're a niche company, of course, we're dealing just with the pricing issue, but we actually feed our work into a lot of the other industry initiatives, like the rating agencies. We provide the interest rate calculations and standardization processes for all of the microfinance specific rating agencies, MicroRate, Microfinance, MCRIL, and Planet Rating. So we try and feed into some of those initiatives and support those initiatives. We're members of the Social Performance Task Force, and we help develop those indicators, the social performance indicators that are on the mix. I think there are a lot of initiatives happening. The measurement tools, I was actually just at the Social Performance Task Force meetings 2 weeks ago, and there's 5 measurement tools, or I don't know how many, but there's a lot. So there's tons of tools, there's tons of initiatives. We actually heard from the institutions themselves that were at the meetings that they don't even know where to begin. There's all of these things, there's all these different projects and tools and things, and they don't know where to start. So we're kind of going back to square one again and thinking through, okay, what really is going to help an institution. And the way we think about it is you have to look at your different target audiences. So we need to, yes, help the institutions be better for their clients. We need to educate clients better. So focusing on financial literacy, whether that's a pay-for-service or a free service offered by institutions. We need to focus on training the media. In our preparation call yesterday, Scott was kind of laughing at me because we try and train media in every country we work in, which is sort of a futile effort, but we try. We try.
Definition.
We really do try, because if we can make at least one journalist smarter about what the industry is doing.
Do they wish to be trained?
And then, like I mentioned earlier, focusing on government. So you have to really look at each layer, and it's not just focusing on one target audience and hoping that we'll know that what we're doing is helpful, but it's really making everyone a bit smarter. So it's making everyone understand the tools, everyone encouraging institutions to get not only financial rating but also social rating, although I'm hesitant to say that again because of Gary's opinions. But trying to communicate the standards that we're promoting, the standards of the new ratios and standards that are coming out, but also just using common terminology across markets. I mean, I feel like there's a million things you could do. It's a matter of where you start and how you communicate it, because I think a lot of our challenge is how we communicate. And we're often very reactive as an industry and not proactive. And I think we need to start getting proactive and seeking out media and trying to use them to our advantage, as opposed to reacting when LAPO's interest rates in Nigeria sound really, really high and all these social investors are getting backlash. So trying to use these outlets to our benefit and getting ahead of the curve rather than just reacting to all of the potential negative feedback.
Makes sense.
Okay, so definitely research, like the PPI. You can try the media education. Good luck with that. Let's see. I think the biggest, and certainly the standards. I mean, the standards are helpful. What the comment I realized after this that I need to pass on about the standards is that there should be some very high-level discussion with the standards and focusing in on one or two key indicators that the industry gets behind using and saying, look, because that's how you can affect the media is if everybody consistently starts looking at a small whatever the indicators are. That will help enormously.
And then to sound bite-ize our story.
Yeah, really get it very, very as succinct as possibly, digestible. And then I would get back to this issue of really trying to ratchet down the rhetoric about what microfinance can deliver. And I would say every investor and all of the networks could really stand to do some of this, to just bring down the rhetoric about what microfinance can accomplish. I think it's in Portfolios of the Poor, someone can correct me, where they said something like, well, there's a lot of research on microfinance effectiveness, and it's kind of all over the map, but what microfinance really does sort of absolutely seem to do in their view is, at the minimum, it seems to help the poor cope with poverty. And I'll tell you, compared to what's out there in the world, that is a very good story. If that's the downside, that's a very, very positive story. And better to sort of start with that as the base and kind of work up from that where you can, rather than to say, we're lifting everyone out of poverty. And I mean, I'll pick on this. I'll pick on the Grameen Bank statistic of, we're 1 out of every X number of people is being lifted out of poverty. That when you do that, if you do just basic math, you sit there and go 1 out of 5, and they've got 8 million people, and pretty soon everybody's like in Bangladesh is like they're living in Flushing. So it's and you don't want, and that's how a reporter could look at that. That's how they look at that. They're going, they've got a day to write the story, they look at it, they see a statistic that says 1 out of X, they do a little bit of math, and they're like, well, how come there are poor people left? So I think that would help enormously. No, I added investors. I added,